Good evening and welcome to the regular Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, September 3rd, 2024. Welcome to the fall. My name is Steve Duck and I'm the chair for the committee meeting tonight. I'd like to introduce my fellow colleagues. To my far left is Councillor Novak, just teasing. Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor Chad, and to my far right is Mayor McNeil Smith, Councillor Duncan, and your name again? No. Councillor Garnett. That's too funny, I forgot. Anyway, let's move on with this, and thank you for coming. I want to welcome staff that are in council chambers tonight, as well as public that are attending the meeting in person, and to those attending online, and any that may seek to watch our presentation next year and have a laugh along with me of the council meeting. With that, I'll move on to our territorial acknowledgement. And I want to acknowledge that we're on the traditional territories of the Wasanic people, the Sartlip, Sawat, Sakem, and Pequotchon, who have stewarded this land for generations. And I hope that we can join them in managing the future forward for this land and keeping it in good stead. With that, I'll call for approval of the agenda. Any additions or changes? Mayor McNeil Smith. Second, Councillor Novak. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. I will now move to public participation, and I invite anyone from the public that wishes to come up and speak about any item on the agenda tonight. With the exception, if you're speaking on the development application, there will be a special public participation for that application. Is there anyone wishing to speak to any agenda item tonight? If so, please come to the microphone. I'll call for a second time, and finally for a third time. Thank you. We'll close public participation, and I'll move to approval of the minutes, and I seek a motion to approve the minutes of the regular committee of the whole meeting, August 2nd, 2024. So moved. Seconded?
Second.
And seconded by Councillor Garnett. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. We'll move to number 7, and development applications, and development permit application DP 100846. 2242 and 2244 Harbour Road to erect a prefabricated 2-story marine industrial building. And I look for the presentation by the applicant, Frank Austin. If you'd like to come to the microphone and just hit the button and turn on the red one, that'd be great. Just press the red button there.
Sorry.
Perfect, thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Frank Austin. My wife and I own Vector Yacht Services on Harbour Road, and we're applying for a building permit. Now, let's see how you do this. Okay. So, we're on Harbour Road. We have the 3 lots that are the bottom part, the water side is the boatyard, and in the upper is some buildings, some older buildings, and we put a new building a few years ago. But so this is a view of the boatyard itself. We've been in Sydney for Vector's been around for 30 years. I bought it and moved it onto the boatyard in 2004. So I've been 21 years or 22 years or so. Running the operation there. We can haul boats to 70 feet and 55 metric tons, so fairly large boats. A few years ago, we put this 40 by 60 steel building in because we're a Zodiac repair center, so we do work for the government, and inflatable hypalon stuff needs to be indoors with a controlled environment, and then we also use it for our larger inventories of Suzuki's and Mercury and Volvo engines. So if anybody needs anything, come to us. Our shops, the shops that we have, the 2 buildings that we're going to remove are old. They're poorly insulated, poor lighting, poor workflow. So we're looking at replacing those with a new building. This building is 80 feet by 100 feet. It's got a mezzanine on the Harbour Road. You're looking at the south end of that, basically. So the inside, there's a shop that's where you see those 3 boats is approximately 80 by 75 feet in area. So we'll have more boats in there than it's just the 3. But and then the front part is going to be for our parts and service area on the lower level. And then we're going to have above that on a mezzanine deck, we're going to have a large conference room. We do a lot of training with our staff because we're Volvo, Merck, Suzuki, Zodiac dealers, so we do a lot of training for our staff. So we're putting in a large conference room and some more offices on the mezzanine deck. And that's the front, the top of it, large glass front window, and the lower picture is the east side. And we've got parking planned along the building. I set the building in 20 feet to allow some parking along the building. Our timeline has been slipping. We were hoping to get the building permit, the development permit in May and the building permit in July, and order the building in August. That's all slipped a little bit. Hopefully we can get the building permit this month and start groundbreaking in October. We've got the design fairly well complete, so the building permit application itself, after I get approval, should be fairly quick. And by the way, I got the architect, Keith Tetlow there is from Kilo Architect. He's there in case there's any questions I can't answer. And my wife's in the back row in case I go completely off the rails, she can take over. So we're hoping to have the building move in March of 2025. The erection assembly goes in December, January, complete the interior in January, February, and then move in March. I don't want to wait. I can't wait too long because we get really busy right after that. So I can't interrupt the whole operation by doing stuff after that. So that's kind of why it's important, and I finish this up. So that's another view of the building. On the right would be the parking along the edge there. We designed it to have 6 or 7 parking spaces along there. I set the building back 20 feet to allow that the lot's 100 feet, so or the 2 lots are 100 feet. So, which is creating a little issue with the parking requirements. So looking down on it, area A there is where we have planned parking, and because the building is so large, because we want to put boats inside, the actual calculation requires us to put in 14 parking spots, which will take up boat storage that we use it for boats and boat maintenance. So that's a real concern for us going forward. Normally we would have boats parked along there or in the back, so by having so many parking stalls required, it eliminates some of this boat parking storage that we have. So anyway, it's a concern. And then we also, the bylaw requires us to put in indoor bike parking / storage, which I must admit I don't like at all. It's in a shop environment. It's not. I think the bylaw, in my view, would have been intended for a multi-use condo development that requires people to put their bikes away at night. This is a working operation that we require to have bikes inside. We do have bikes racks outside, but not inside. Well, yeah, we have a spot for them inside as well. And I think that's it. Open for some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Austin. We'll first move to public participation to see if there's any questions from the public or observations. Anyone wishing to come forward to the microphone to speak on this? Calling for a second time. And a third, and we'll close public participation. I'll now move to committee members if you have any questions of the presenter. Councillor Chad.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Austin, for your presentation. Certainly an ambitious undertaking with respect to timeline, and so I wanted to circle back to that element. And forgive me if I missed it. Maybe in your response, just let us know about how many local employees you have, and then talk to me a little bit about your March sort of deadline for completion and what it looks like if that slips at all for your business, so we can have an appreciation for what you're up against.
Yeah, we have 35 employees, and it doesn't vary too much. Sometimes 1 or 2 people in the wintertime go south or do something. So, but it's generally about 35 employees. As far as the slipping, part of this project, we got some funding from ABCMI, Associated British Columbia Marine Industries, to put in this building. So they're providing 500,000 of the 1.5 million. So and their deadline is March 2025. So I'm not 100% sure what happens after that with them. I was hoping I didn't have to tell them, but not that, I mean, if we go over that, obviously would tell them, but yeah, so it's, I mean, it jeopardizes what we're going to do, that's for sure. So it all, like I said, it all depends on, you know, when we can start, obviously, when we can order the building, and then some of the things that are required, I don't know if that's going to stay. Like, we're required to replace the sidewalk in front with a 2-meter sidewalk, whereas the rest of the Harbour Road entirety is 5 feet wide. So, you know, there's some issues, and that somebody told me it would be like $25,000 to do that. So there's some issues around that as well. I mean, I'm very concerned about the cost. I can't let this go, you know, out of control. So yeah.
Okay, well, no, thank you for giving us a better appreciation for implications around timeline and the grant status as well, and congratulations on receiving that, and thank you for your presentation.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Austin, as well, for your presentation. And a couple of my questions might require your architect that's in the room for answering. And I appreciating it's just an artist rendition when I'm looking at this, because having been out there the other day, and what you're proposing is far better to look at than what's there now. There's representation of some trees in front of the building, and I'm wondering, is that the intention that it might be something towards with the town as well? But if that's something that there's an intention to actually provide when the building goes up?
Yeah, it's part of the requirement, or what we're going to do anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. No, I appreciate that.
We put in some trees.
Yeah.
On the other lot,
Yeah.
right? A couple of them. So yeah.
No, that's great, because I think that would soften the massing of the building and
Yeah.
for better pedestrian connectivity. As far as the glass windows at the very front that you talk about, and yeah, I can picture that being dramatic. And when I was reading what you wrote in your letter, I was wondering, in terms of the actual glass itself, given that it's south facing and the sun would probably reflect off it, is there any consideration given to some kind of filming or something in terms of preventing bird strikes?
Yeah, we put some flags up along, and I think they showed up on the building. Remember we.
I see it there.
Yeah, we put some flags around the overhang there, which was kind of intent to do that.
Yeah, if I could just quickly comment, sure.
Just come up to the microphone if you could, please.
Okay. I have a loud voice.
Get your own mic.
It's more for the convenience of those online.
The one of the main issues with bird strikes is just them not knowing that there is glass there. So a big part of it, and we have to work within the sign bylaws, is actually putting the Vector Yachts logo on there, and that'll help them see that, because otherwise we're putting things such as, like, you know, images of owls or, you know, that kind of thing on the glass, and that helps. Just it's really bad when they don't know that that's something that's solid there. So mirrored glass is bad, or even regular glasses. But as soon as you put a logo on there, it helps a lot in the door. So I'm hoping that that'll be enough for them to clue in. Yeah, it's a good
Perfect.
question. I have a house that murders birds, so it's something that, that I really, I don't, it bugs me so much, so I'm kind of an
Sure.
expert on it now. Yeah.
Thank you. And you might as well stay, because I was
Sure.
just curious
Yeah.
with the second floor, in the room in the southwest corner, the lunchroom, proposed lunchroom, conference room. I noticed when you look on the west side of the building, there doesn't appear to be a window there, and I'm wondering if there was any
Right.
thought to putting a
There's-
window
yeah,
for
good-
natural light.
Good point. And okay, so we were actually
Wrong
pretty
way.
tight up against the side. We don't have a, that we were tight up against that side, and there was talk, because we're so tight against there, I'm not sure
Yeah.
if you guys know that there's a requirement for limiting distance to not allow fire to spread to the next door property partially. So we can mitigate that by putting fire shutters on the windows, just because the building is tight up against there. It's something that we will be looking further down, like in the actual building permit application.
Yep.
We'll have that dialed in a little more. But
Perfect.
it's a kind of a cost thing. It's like, how much
Yeah,
do we want the
no.
windows? How much are we gonna spend
Yep.
on fire shutters on the outside? Or we can do it with sprinklers as well, which is
Yeah, and
another
we-
option.
And we also, instead of having windows, we're gonna have screens like this inside, because we have pictures of our boatyard as we're operating, so people can see what's
Yeah.
going on,
Yep.
so we have those as well.
Perfect. And one last question, if I may. Because there is a second floor and there's office spaces in the lunchroom we've just talked about, I was poring over that, and it's really hard to see sometimes in the schematics. Access to the second floor other than stairs.
That's right. So we have a lot. Yes, we're not currently planning to have an elevator, and the way that we're getting around that is to provide a full office. There's a lot of office room downstairs as well. In fact, there's equal office space down below as well as above. So handicapped people or people with with a disability in terms of going up and down the stairs would be accommodated downstairs. So this would be for the people who don't. And that's currently what we're doing right now.
Oh, okay, so that if they were employed there, they wouldn't have access to the conference room or the lunchroom?
Oh, well, the lunchroom, that's true right now, the way the design is. We're
Yeah.
gonna have to have some kind of accommodation for them
Right.
downstairs. Yeah, for sure. Just because of the nature of boat repair, there are no handicap or people with at least mobility disabilities being employed in the repair. So it's all office work that the people would be potentially involved
Yeah.
with. So we'll be tracking that one in the building permit process for sure, to make
Okay.
sure that can work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. A few questions. So you mentioned some concern about the 14 parking stalls, but I didn't see any mention in here of request for a variance. So is that something you plan to ask for, or? I guess I'm asking for a few reasons, because knowing that you seem to be under a tight timeline, so it'd be, I would think, time consuming to go through and then find out that, yes, you have to get a variance for this, and then you have to come back to us. So just wondering how you see that all playing out.
We haven't really tackled that yet. I did ask about a variance, and they told me it was $250, and I suggested, well, why don't you change your bylaw to make sense with industrial area, right? So, I don't know.
But right now, if I could just speak to that,
Sure.
right now we actually have room for 15, but Frank's objection is not really the space involved. So my suggestion was just to go for the 14, say 14, and then we'll have a discussion about whether or not he's able to use that for temporary boat, I guess, maneuvering, right? Because that's the thing. It's
Okay.
all in that northern part there.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the plan as it is provides the required numbers?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Even
Gotcha.
more than what's required, because we
Okay.
still need that maneuvering space there. It's just how much we're gonna dedicate it to parking versus the
Right.
ability to move the boats around.
Okay, sure,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
understood.
we're a little bit question mark
Yeah.
about that.
So, so this, you outlined how this new building will, allow work to flow better lighting and that sort of thing, bring some boats inside. Will it increase your capacity in terms of taking on, more business? Do you anticipate that?
Well, we'll certainly be able to take on different business if we need to, because some work has to be done indoors, and right now
Right.
we don't have a very good place for indoors. So yeah, it might change what we're doing, but
Okay,
capacity might not change that much. I mean, it's hard to get good techs for one, and so that's
Right.
kind of limiting itself.
right, okay. And with that other sort of business coming in, is there, what amount of spin-off is there for other businesses in the area? So work that you take on, I'm not familiar with all the businesses down there, but will there be opportunities for, will this create additional opportunities for other businesses down there?
Yeah, and it has in the past when we've done work. We do a lot of mechanical stuff. We don't paint boats. We don't fiberglass. We don't do canvas work, and those they're around us, right? So we get Philbrooks to do fiberglassing for us, or the canvas shop, 200 yards away that does canvas for us. So yeah, we bring a lot of carpeting, all that stuff. We don't do, but we bring in help
Right.
to do it.
Yeah, okay. And I assume that grant from ABCMI, is that part of the provincial government's Maritime Industries Infrastructure Program?
Yeah,
The
that's right.
provincial
Yeah.
grant?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so hopefully they would have a bit of flexibility there. And you talked about additional offices. How many additional offices do you anticipate?
Well, we'll probably have we have room, like downstairs is below the mezzanine is gonna be 3 offices, which is the operations. Upstairs is a conference room, and then there's, flexibility, we're not gonna put them all in, but we'll have ability to put in probably, 8 or 10 offices?
We have an occupant load count for the office area, 25, so.
Yeah, so up on the mezzanine deck, there's areas that could be filled in eventually. We're not,
Okay, and those would, most of those would be available for other marine-related type businesses?
that's what
Is
I'm
that-
hoping, yeah, we can rent
Okay.
some of them out.
Yeah, okay, that's great. And, yeah, I think that's it for me. Thanks very much, yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. Any other first-time questions? Mayor McNeil-Smith?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Austin, for the presentation. In your letter of rationale with the plans, you speak explicitly to requesting that committee this evening, which would, in our recommendation, will go to council meeting next Monday, not forward these plans to our Advisory Planning Commission. You haven't spoken to that in your presentation tonight. I wanted to give you an opportunity. I'm not going to motivate about the pros and cons of APC, but do you want to address that specifically? You've spoken to the timeline and where you see your sense of urgency, but you are understanding of the process and understanding that the staff recommendation is to forward it to the Advisory Planning Commission. Do you wish to speak to that?
Sorry, I didn't follow that.
Okay, so the recommendation in the agenda from staff this evening for the committee is to forward these plans to our Advisory Planning Commission.
Right.
That is regular process for us. It's a citizen-appointed committee. Again, I won't motivate further one way or the other on that, but that is the process. In your letter of rationale, you speak to not wanting council committee to forward it just to approve it directly without forwarding it. If we forward it to the Advisory Planning Commission, that is going to take a number of weeks until the Planning Commission, first it has to go to council next Monday, then it would have to go to the Advisory Planning Commission, and then their recommendations would come back to a council meeting, and we would make our decision then.
Well, my recommendation is to give me the building permit. I'll go and start building it.
Okay, well, this evening, we're considering a development permit.
Right.
After you receive development permit approval, as I think you're aware, you will then work with staff on the building permit.
Right.
So, okay, thank you. Thank you,
Any
Chair.
further questions, Councillor Novak or Councillor Duncan? I have a question, if I may. I'm following up on Councillor Garnett's question about access to the mezzanine level. You mentioned in the lunchroom, conference room, that you do a lot of training there. How are you providing training to those that don't have physical access to that area?
Well, we have downstairs offices that are set up that we can do that kind of training.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would they attend virtually in that case, or would the training be done for them individually? Or
No, it could be done downstairs.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any further questions, council or committee members? No? Thank you, Mr. Austin. We'll now move to any questions from committee to staff. Any questions for staff? Oh, yes, Ms. Verhagen, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, as the applicant indicated, this is a development permit application for the property, not a building permit application. And as was pointed out, if the development permit is approved, then they would apply for a building permit. They have not applied for any variances, so the parking discussion, there are 14 parking spaces required and 1 loading space that is provided on the property. As was noted in the staff report, a portion of each parking space that runs north-south along the side of the building, the proposed building, extends onto the adjacent parcel. So right now this is 3 pieces of land, like three titles of property, and they'd be consolidating 2 of the parcels to build this new building. There would still be 1 parcel on the side. So the driveway for this property comes in on the east property to access these parking spaces. So the owner would need to register an access easement on title to get to these parking spaces, which are owned by the same party, but as the town does not control business changes and property ownership changes, they would need to secure this agreement on title before we could issue a building permit. But as of right now, they have not applied for any variances. It's a straight development permit application. I would like to comment on the timing. Due to provincial requirements about site disclosure statements and the nature of marine industrial businesses, we did require a site disclosure statement from the property owner, which is a provincially legislated required process to early on in a development process identify potentially contaminated sites. So a property owner is required to submit this form when they're submitting a development application, a zoning amendment application, a subdivision application, or a building permit application on lands where certain listed uses may have occurred. So the owner submitted this form as is required by the province. Certain uses were indicated on there that had occurred. That doesn't mean contamination has occurred. It just means that it kind of flags that it needs to be looked into by the province. So town staff then sent the form on to the province. And as per provincial legislation, the town cannot approve this permit until we hear back from the province and are given the all clear. So we have not heard back from the province yet. Town staff contacted them again to see what an estimated timeline would be to receive a response. But we have not yet received a response on that. So we couldn't issue this permit until we hear back from the province. So that's important to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Verhagen. Any further questions from committee members? I have one just to clarify on, is there a requirement for any accessible parking in those 14 stalls?
There's 2, type A and type B.
Yeah, there is. The parking ballot requires 1 type A and 1 type B parking space. And so those are proposed on the plans.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and they would have to be marked as that. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll now look for, Councillor O'Keefe.
Yeah, thanks. So a question through you to staff. So there's no variances being requested. Do we still need to send this to APC? Like, what's the reason for sending it to APC? I mean, I know that's normally our process, but in this sort of development where there's no variances, what's our rationale for sending it there?
So the property is within the Harbour Road Marine Development Permit Area, which is a designated development permit area for the form and character or the look of the buildings. So the purpose of referring it to APC would be to review it against those design guidelines and policies that are in the official community plan. That's why any development in a form and character development permit area would be referred to APC.
Okay, and so we would look at this again at council next Monday, and then when would be the next APC that we might get this on the agenda for?
So the APC meetings are on the 1st and 3rd Tuesdays of the month. We just held one today, September 3rd. So the next one would be what, September 17th?
Yeah.
So 1st and 3rd Tuesdays. So council would be receiving committee of the whole's recommendation from tonight, next Monday on September 9th.
Okay,
So there potentially is enough time to get that to APC on September 17th, but I'm not sure. We'd have
Oh.
to see. So then the next ones would again be first and third Tuesdays of October.
okay, that's great. And yeah, that's all the questions for me, thank you.
Any other committee members have questions? I'll then seek one committee member to read in the recommendation. Okay, thanks, you, Councillor O'Keefe.
I recommend that development permit application number DP 100846 for 2242 and 2244 Harbour Road to permit the form and character of a prefabricated two-story marine industrial building be forwarded to the APC Commission for review and comment.
Second. Second, Councillor Novak, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Rintoul? Oh, yeah. Mover gets first shot.
Oh, sure. I'd just like to say I'm pleased to see this development come forward. This aligns well with our, one of our goals in our economic development strategy to promote our blue economy strategy, or our blue economy. I think, you know, there's not a lot that we can do in terms of, we can't build facilities for businesses in that sector, but if there's anything we can do in terms of, helping this move along so that it can benefit from that grant from the ABCMI and the province, I think is important for us to do what we can to help them meet those timelines. To me, this is different than a multifamily development where there's a developer who's out to make money and selling units and stuff like that. This is a local business who's trying to create more business in the area. So I think it's worth supporting. Thank you.
As seconder, Councillor Novak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to see this move forward as quickly as possible. I think this is a kind of development, as Councillor O'Keefe mentioned, it's part of our strategic plan in embracing the blue economy. It's gratifying to see that a small business person is prepared to make such a substantial investment in the community and really raise the bar on the marine services that are available in Sydney. And I think we need to do everything we can to expedite this and see that that there are no more barriers than absolutely necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rintoul.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. With respect to the timeline and the referral to APC, I'll acknowledge having come in here, concerned with that recommendation, personally, and thinking that we may look to make a recommendation to bypass that. However, hearing from staff that a component of this is pending on a provincial process around environmental soil conditions, and not having heard back from that body yet, as at this point, I'm hopeful that this is on the September 17th Advisory Planning Commission agenda and can expeditiously be dealt with at that venue and referred back to council for the following Monday, and have this, as my colleagues have suggested, continue to move forward expeditiously. I'll leave my comments there and I'll support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Garnett.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm not going to reiterate points already made, but I was thinking when I was looking through this, having gone through the official community plan update and the process for that, and then the following zoning bylaw update, for me, this is my vision of this area. This is the kind of development I saw with what we were doing. So I think it aligns really well, and I'll just wait to hear back from APC, and hopefully we'll hear back from the government in a timely fashion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Garnett. Any further? Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I don't know if this is a question, well, it's a comment, I guess, to staff and maybe to the proponent of the proposal. I'm wondering if the province, the particular department of the province that you're dealing with in regards to the contaminated sites, whether they're aware that this applicant has been awarded a grant under the provincial government's marine industries infrastructure modernization strategy. And I guess, you know, often in provincial government, one department doesn't know what the other is doing. And if they realize that it was their provincial government that is giving the funds, and that those funds might not be able to be utilized if that permission isn't granted, is that something that we can advise them of to motivate them to move quicker?
Through Ms. Verheugen, please.
Sure, thank you. Council, committee of the whole may want to make a motion to that effect to contact the province. If council wanted to make a resolution to that effect and send a letter to the province to let them know, that could be done.
We could treat that as motion arising.
Okay, so not now, we'll get through this and, okay.
Any further comments from committee members? And I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor O'Keefe.
Okay, maybe staff can help me word this, but I'll start with that staff contact the provincial ministry responsible for site disclosure statements and advise them that this applicant has received a grant under their BC Marine Industries Infrastructure Modernization and Expansion Grant Program, and that we request they handle this approval on an expedited basis.
You have a second to the
I'll
motion?
second that.
No, I can't. But does that?
I'll just go through to staff to make sure they've got some form of a motion there.
So that staff contact the provincial ministry responsible for site disclosure statements. Was that the right word? I didn't quite catch that
Yeah, and
one.
I guess I'm looking to Ms. Verheugen to see if there's a specific department that we should refer to, or whether that wording is sufficient.
I think that's sufficient. That gets the point across, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Councillor O'Keefe, and advise them that the applicant has received this grant and that the town requests that, can you just finish the last part of
So
that?
that the applicant has received a grant under the BC Marine Industries Infrastructure Modernization and Expansion Program.
Councillor, I leave it to you to motivate.
I'm just making sure she's got it all. And that we request the province to expedite this particular request.
I think we're good to go.
Yeah.
Councillor, do you wish to motivate?
I don't think you really want me to.
Do we need a seconder before?
But
Seconder was
I mean-
Councillor Novak.
the general gist is, as the proponent has said, time is of the essence. This is a $1.5 million project. They're looking to get a third of that covered by the province. And perhaps if this approval body knows that those funds are potentially in jeopardy, it might motivate them to kind of move it up in the queue.
Councillor Novak, a seconder.
I don't really have anything to add. The only thing I would say is that, you know, the government is very focused on housing these days, and I would hope that the rest of the economy is not treated as a second-class citizen because of this, and that they devote some of their many resources to seeing that this moves through quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other committee members wish to comment? All right, we have a motion before us. Call all those in favor of the question. Passes unanimously. Thank you, councillors. And we'll now move on to item number 8 on the agenda, the staff reports. And I look to staff for a report on personal permissive tax exemptions, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The intent of this report is to provide council with information regarding the renewal of existing tax exemptions and to seek guidance on a new application. The town has 12 existing tax exemptions under 3 separate bylaws, and they're all up for renewal this year. In addition to the renewals, Beacon Community Services has submitted new applications for all 6 of their properties within the town. The staff report provides details about both the renewals and the new application. In terms of the existing applications, 7 out of 12 of these are relatively straightforward, and those organizations were not asked to reapply. The focus of the renewal efforts was on the 5 organizations operating from private property. Each of these organizations is discussed in the staff report. And there is information from those organizations also included as appendices. Beacon Community Services applied for exemptions for all 6 of their properties, as mentioned. Staff are recommending denial of the applications for their 3 thrift store properties and consideration of the other 3. There is staff recommendations in the report on the various renewals and the new application, and I'd be pleased to address any questions council might have.
Thank you, Mr. Hisik. Before we proceed, I'll just give some direction to committee members on addressing these. We have 4 recommendations, which we'll approach each individually. Specific to number 2 and 3, within those ones, we have to look at them either as a group or individually. I would suggest, given some parameters around each of number 2, that we look at them individually. We also have to consider term length. Currently, staff are recommending a renewal term of 10 years, but that can be changed to any portion of that. Specifically under number 2E, Broadmead Care Society is only looking for 2 years. And the last consideration is the percentage of exemption committee is suggesting for the different applications. So with that, I would, unless there's any questions in the general applications here for permissive tax exemptions, would we like to start addressing each of the recommendations? Councillor O'Keefe.
I just had a question first.
Please.
Through you to staff. I just want to confirm, in regards to the seniors' residences, and I'm just wanting to confirm, do all of them offer units that are affordable for seniors? Like Broadmead, for example, I see that, you know, they talked about they have an adult day program. There's a small drop-in fee. They also have 73 seniors who require long-term care. But I wasn't sure whether they actually provide care for seniors who are low income.
Councillor, I clarified that Rest Haven Lodge is geared towards low to modest income residents, and
Okay.
they go through an income test to confirm.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I would like to go to the appropriate page and make the first recommendation, number 1, that 10-year permissive tax exemption renewals be granted to the following properties or organizations: A, Lions Food Bank; B, Sydney Historical Museum; C, Artsea Community Arts Council; D, Sydney Business Improvement Area Society; E, New Marine Centre; F, Shoal Centre, the portions leased to Beacon Community Services; and G, Memorial Park Society.
Do we have a seconder to that?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Any discussion? And would you like to motivate, Councillor?
I think the report is quite clear, and it's captured in the recommendation that these organizations have previously had permissive tax exemptions. All but one are municipal properties where organizations are providing community benefit. The Memorial Park Society is certainly providing community benefit on their own property.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan.
Nothing to add.
Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you, Chair. If I could, through you to staff, just clarify for my better understanding, with respect to the Scout and Guide Hall, this tax exemption applies to the organization, I take it, as opposed to the property, in the sense that the town has.
Point of order?
Yes, so go ahead.
Sorry, I think Scout is the next grouping.
It's under item 2.
We're speaking
So we're in
just to
recommendation
number 1 at this point.
Just these ones here.
Okay.
Point of
Thank
order
you.
noted. Any other questions or comments?
Oh,
Okay, I will call the question. All in favor of recommendation number 1? Passed unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move to recommendation number 2. Can I have somebody read that in, please?
Just point, were we going to break this one apart? Because I know I should probably recuse myself for the Scout
Fair
and
enough,
Guide
yeah.
Hall.
So we'll be addressing each of items in number 2, A through E, individually. And as Councillor Duncan has mentioned, she is in conflict here. So we'll move to A first. If you want to leave the room, Ms. Garnett, or Mr. Duncan. And so, yes, I'd like, if we could have a committee member read in 2A, please. So we may address this. Councillor O'Keefe?
I'll move that council consider a renewal and a permissive tax exemption for the Scout and Guide Hall. And our staff
Sorry,
wants...
point of order.
Yes?
Sorry, I realized that the staff report recommendation is indicating consider, but that's actually direction to staff
Sorry, yes,
Right.
yes, yeah.
to move one way or the other.
Yes, thank you. I move that council approve a permissive tax exemption for the Scout and Guide Hall for a period of 10 years.
Okay. And is that a full 100% exemption?
Yes.
Okay, just to clarify that within the motion.
Well, sorry, just maybe some clarification through staff. Is that what we've provided in the past?
Currently, all exemptions are 100%. So
Okay,
may I suggest that unless council desires something less than that, no specific wording to that effect is required. I'll just
Oh,
assume full
okay.
exemption.
okay, thank you.
Seconder?
I'll second.
Discussion? Councillor O'Keefe?
No, I think they're a good community group. They're run by volunteers. I see no reason why to not approve this.
Just remember to turn on your mic. Mayor McNeil-Smith? Councillor O'Toole?
yeah, thank you, Chair. And apologies, I should have clarified this during the staff report component. With respect to Scout and Guide Hall, through the chair to staff, just clarify for me, again, the report makes this clear that one of these is a town property, which is automatically exempt. And so we are exempting, PT is applying to this organization and that second property. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct. As of right now, in the absence of a license of occupation, the town property is automatically exempted, but we are looking to formalize that arrangement with such license of occupation, and once that's registered, we will have to add this to the PTE bylaw, so I might preemptively do that if this succeeds.
And given that, does that license of occupation process include engagement with the society itself or the trust and require their, I guess, participation in that process of license of occupation?
Has to involve both parties, yes.
Okay, so given that that's pending and ongoing, our staff recommending, are comfortable with the recommendation that this is for a 10-year period?
We are.
Okay.
Sorry, if I might add, if anything changes in the course of those 10 years in terms of use of the property, then that would nullify the exemption and we'd bring it back for council action if and when required.
Okay, I'm cautious with respect to my approach on this, so I'll pause there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further? Councillor, or Mayor McNeil-Smith?
Thank you, Chair, and through you to staff. On the same topic, would it be helpful if this motion was amended? The motion that is on the floor is making reference to the privately owned property, that we amend it to add that subject to a license of occupation agreement that PTE be provided for the town-owned property.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It certainly couldn't hurt to be clear about that now, and then if the second property is added to the bylaw preemptively, then that'll be covered. But when the bylaws actually come back for readings, that can be a time when council can confirm that as well.
Okay, I'll hold off making the amendment, given that the bylaw would have to come forward for amending. We could do the approval at that time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions? I'll then call the question on the provide the renewal and direction and permissive exemption to the Scout and Guide Hall. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Essick. I'll look for a committee member to read in 2B. Mayor McNeil Smith.
I move that a 10-year permissive tax exemption renewal be granted to Anavets.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mayor McNeil Smith, do you want to motivate or anything you want to add?
No, I think the staff report is clear of the benefits to the community. We could see that while Anavets does significant fundraising during the year, and they granted $93,000 in 2023. The tax amount where this PTE to be denied would be $59,000, and so they're going to this year-long effort to raise these funds and provide them to organizations in the community, and that would lessen their impact by more than half.
Councilor Garnett? Any further observations or comments? Thank you. Then I will call the question on providing permissive tax exemption to the Anavets. All in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Look for committee member to read in. Mayor McNeil Smith.
I move that a 10-year permissive tax exemption renewal be granted to Shoreline Medical Society.
Second.
Moved and seconded, and Mayor McNeil Smith. Councilor Rintoul. Councilor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I did have some reservations about this, because when I look at, I understand that they're a registered society, but they're, I don't see how they're different from, say, Ocean Pier Medical Clinic. All of the doctors get paid, all the staff there get paid. They get paid on a certain, they're not allowed to get extra income, say at Ocean Pier Medical Center, because they're a corporation. So I was somewhat concerned that it seemed to be why we would do this. Having said that, I understand from staff that they have had a legal opinion on this, and that, you know, part of the justification for this is to make Sydney a more attractive place for doctors to set up practice, so I can justify that. And I assume that if some place like Ocean Pier Clinic decided to form a society and operate under a similar format, that we would allow a similar tax exemption to them as well. So just want to explain my rationale, and but I will still support the motion.
Thank you. Councilor Garnett.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I will support the motion, and I think what separates this particular application is that this is a different model. It's a different technique of how to provide medical care in our community. And I remember back when I first moved into the community, I was fortunate enough to get a family doctor with my family. My second son was going to be born, and so we were at that actual, and there was at the time only 2 family doctors in there with a walk-in clinic, and the walk-in clinic has subsequently gone to Saanich Peninsula Hospital, but now there are multiple doctors in this facility, and so multiple people in this community have been able to find a family doctor, and I think that's one way we can help support the medical industry, one of the tools we have, and I'm more than happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Duncan.
Thank you. I think we should also just clarify that the general arrangement and the different model we're speaking of that makes them part of the permissive tax exemption is that they are a not-for-profit. And that's the official criteria that the town of Sydney has, and this is delivering medical services in a not-for-profit model. Any medical clinic, if they did convert to a not-for-profit, would of course then be eligible, if they met the same not-for-profit criteria. And that it is important to note that many, employees, any not-for-profit do get paid, and that, we're not looking at this as whether it's an giving, a benefit, something to the employees of the not-for-profit that is operating this by giving this, but rather that we're providing the society with a minimization of their expenses that will potentially allow them to expand in exactly the same manner that we would give any not-for-profit.
Thank you. Any further comment? Then I'll call for a vote on the motion to provide permissive tax exemption to Shoreline Medical Society. All in favor? Opposed? None. Carried unanimously. Thank you. Now look for a committee member to read in 2D. Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I would move that a 10-year permissive tax exemption renewal be provided to St. Andrews Abbeyfield Housing Society.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mayor McNeil-Smith, any comment?
Thank you. I'm supportive of continuing to provide this permissive tax exemption. The Society provides supporting housing for 9 low to modest income residents. Yes, it is a small, affordable seniors rental, but it has been in our community quite some time. NBC Housing provides an ongoing subsidy to the operation. Thank you.
Councillor Garnett. Any other further comments on this permissive tax exemption? All right, thank you. We'll now look for a motion or a vote on providing permissive tax exemption to St. Andrews Abbeyfield Housing Society. All those in favor? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Now move to 2E and look for a motion on that, keeping in mind that the request here is for a 2-year exemption.
Okay. I move that council provide a permissive tax exemption to Broadmead Care Society Rest Haven Lodge for 2 years.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thank you. I'm satisfied to continue providing this exemption for them while they, do the work that they've said they've done. And I think it's clear that they're using it to good advantage because they've only asked for 2 years, because after that they feel that they will have struck the proper balance financially, it seems. And I like that they've been honest about that. Thanks.
Councillor O'Keefe.
Nothing to add.
Any further? Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Chair. I will support the motion, but I do have some reservations, and it centers around information provided in the report that there were $49 million in revenues in 2023, mostly coming from Island Health. And when I look at what they've provided in the report indicating that the savings through the taxes are used to fund capital improvements, that I find a little bit bothersome or troublesome. I would prefer that the money's going towards the low to modest income residents and the programming. So that's just an area where I will support it, but it's an area where I have a little bit of a difficulty. So thank you, Chair.
Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I'll just comment that I had similar reservations with Councillor Garnett, but because it's only for 2 years, I thought I'd let it go for 2 years and see what, as Councillor Duncan mentioned, in terms of their financial situation.
Any further? Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. And as a question through to staff, this is the third 2-year permissive tax exemption the Society is requesting. The previous council members will recall that they made Broadmead Care made a presentation to council of the day requesting it, and they indicated that the reasons were to make significant capital improvements to the lodge as it existed at that time. We understand that those were completed. I'm a little perplexed quite frankly, why they come back for 2 years at a time with the same rationale that we think our finances are going to be, in better equilibrium, whatever the terms that they've used. If I was in their shoes and council for the third time has provided a 2-year tax exemption, why are they not going to come back and ask for a tax exemption? I'll turn through you to staff. Mr. Hissick, did they give any indication as to the reason why they didn't apply for a 10-year?
No, they didn't. I didn't ask them to apply for anything less than, or any specific term. I think they might see their exemption as being somewhat precarious and they don't want to push their luck. That's my guess, but it's only conjecture.
Okay, I'm not gonna make an amendment. Perhaps if we're sitting here 2 years from now doing this and you know, that's the 8th year. I think there's, you know, staff have brought forward, there's purpose to, you know, having these align such that they're not coming piecemeal to council each year. And in principle, I'm supportive of the application. I realize, you know, some concern was expressed by council, but I don't know that concern is gonna change. Capital improvements are important for the type of service that they provide. Whether it goes into their general revenue or whether they say that that's what they're allocating it to is here nor there, really. I'll leave my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. The mayor asked the question.
Okay, any further comments or questions? And I'll call the question on providing permissive tax exemption to Broadmead Care Society, Rest Haven Lodge. All in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Would it be committee's desire to do the same with 3 to address each individually? I see nods of the head, so we'll move ahead on that, and I'll look for a committee member to read in 3A. Councillor Novak?
I'll move that council provide 10-year permissive tax exemption renewal to, first one is assisted living units at the Shoal Centre.
I'll second, but just clarify, it's a new application.
Okay.
Yes, sorry.
Moved and seconded. Councillor Novak? Do you have any?
I've got nothing to add, really.
Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, thanks. Since this is new, I will just say that I'm seconding it because it follows kind of the same criteria of meeting a housing need, especially one that we know that is going to be in shorter and shorter supply and probably more necessary need over the next coming years. So I'm happy to support this in what we can. Thank you.
Further comment? Seeing none, I will seek a motion or a vote on providing permissive tax exemption to the assisted living units of the Shoal Centre. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. I'll ask for a member to read in 3B. Councillor Novak?
I'll move that 10-year permissive tax exemption be granted to Wakefield Manor.
Second.
Second. Moved and seconded. Councillor Novak?
Nothing to add, really.
Councillor Duncan? Any other comments from committee? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on the providing permissive tax exemption to Wakefield Manor. All in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you. I'll look for a committee member to read in 2C, or 3C, sorry. Councillor Novak?
I will move that 10-year permissive tax exemption be granted to the Beacon Community Services offices at 9860 3rd Street.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councillor Novak?
Beacon Community Services is an integral part of this community. They do a lot of good work. Their entire raison d'etre is to raise money and to provide services to those who are less fortunate than we are. And so I see no
Microphone, please.
Sorry, I see no problem with supporting this application.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Keefe?
I'm supportive of this because the services that they provide out of that office focus on families, children, workforce development, which is all important things for us. We're supporting organizations that provide services to seniors. And as I said, this particular office focuses more on families, youth, and getting people working again. So I'm supportive for those reasons.
Further comments from committee members? Councillor Rentoul?
Thank you, Chair. And through to staff, forgive me, I know we don't have their financials as a part of this package, and staff have not made any recommendation with respect to this particular item. In particular, there's some references I know in some of the letters of support here. I'm not looking for your recommendation, or you would have provided it as part of the report, but do we know, does this organization, who I believe has a office location in Victoria as well, receive a similar exemption for what I think is their head office in Victoria, if I'm not mistaken?
Sorry, Councillor, I don't know what other jurisdictions do with Beacon, but I can inquire prior to the bylaw being read.
Yeah, thank you. I think I would like to know that with respect to their office location. I think it's relevant. I'll support it at this time, and I would look for that clarification when it comes to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thank you. I very hesitant about this one. Simply, I share the hesitation that the staff had in their caveat in the report that we don't have an agreement like this, and this does open the door for other types of agreements. The other organizations that we're looking at, these are permissive tax exemptions based on the land being usually a specific bequeath to a type of organization. I would say Scouts and Anavets kind of fall in that, or the Memorial Park Society, where it's the land has an agreement with the town providing a nonprofit thing, and the other things are businesses that are very purpose-driven in that building, and that's what we're looking at is property, and that's why it's a property tax exemption. Whereas the BCS offices could be anywhere. The service they're providing in this particular building could be done in any building at all. And so what we're really doing is we're not looking at preserving this piece of land and these offices, but rather this building that they already have on a very pretty plum deal on a piece of land, right? So I don't actually see the rationale for providing a tax exemption for this organization to run their offices, just knowing that they don't have a specialized function on this particular piece of land and this particular building. And so I'm gonna vote against it for that reason, not because I have anything against Beacon services or the things that they're providing, but rather that in terms of what the town is trying to provide, with its permissive tax exemptions, this doesn't really fit. We do need to make money on something that isn't just shunting it onto the residential portion of the taxes.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Councillor. Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Yes, I'm supportive of this, and I'll go back to some of the things the mover and seconder said, but reading directly from their letter of request for this permissive, for this particular PTE, is that the office located here on 3rd Street provides essential services through Beacon's Children, Youth, and Family Programming and the Work BC program for workplace skills development. And while it is a private piece of property that they own, they are a nonprofit society, and they are providing these important benefits to our communities. So I'm supportive of it on the two principles, that they're a nonprofit and the nature of the services that they're providing. With regards to the other offices that they have elsewhere in the region, I don't know if those offices are general offices, you know, where the CEO and the chief financial officer are. I don't know that, but the fact that these services are being provided out of this location has my support. Thank you.
Councillor O'Keefe.
Yes, thank you. I'll just add that, to me, what's different here is, and why they, in terms of, they could be offices anywhere. Well, yeah, they could, I guess they could, but they would be in Sydney because their primary purpose is to serve our population. And so these are not just offices where bookkeeping and financial stuff is done. These are offices where people actually come in and get services. So they do workforce development. They help people find jobs, which supports our goals around economic development and building our workforce. Poverty reduction, homeless people, they've played a huge role in helping those people find services get them educated and back to work. And also, of course, the children, youth, and families programs are important. So they're actually doing stuff there. It's not just administrative, they're helping people. So I think it's important to support them in that regard.
Councillor Duncan?
Thank you. I'm sorry, I want to clarify because I feel like I'm able to misunderstand. It's not that I'm saying that they're not providing services. It's that I'm saying you can do counseling in any square room. So I understand Beacon Community Services provides child and family services. I am not against child and family and youth services. What I'm saying is that there are literally dozens of community service organizations in the greater Victoria area and on the peninsula. Beacon Services may be the primary one, but that under the rationale we are providing it for Beacon Services, every nonprofit that provides any sort of counseling, family service, workforce counseling, or services to unhoused people would meet this criteria, and I am concerned that therefore we could be opening the door for a lot of people who could be providing that service in any building. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Garnett?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to provide a comment based on something one of my colleagues said, and just so that people might not get offended. And it's like that homeless people don't have to get back to work. There are homeless people in our community and other communities that actually have jobs. They just can't afford the rents and can't find a place to live. So I think it's an important distinction to make. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further comment, committee members? I'll then call for a vote on the motion to provide provisional tax exemption to the BCS offices at 9860 3rd Street. All in favor? All opposed? Opposed is Councillor Duncan. Motion is carried. I'll now seek committee to, Councillor Novak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And before we get to item number 4 in this, I'm wondering if I can ask a question to staff about this particular item.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Through your staff, the report states that that you don't recommend, well, it says that you don't support a tax exemption for this type of property. There's not a lot of detail on exactly what the rationale is for not supporting a tax exemption for Beacon Community Services thrift shops. And I'll get to that a little bit later, but perhaps staff can enlighten me.
Well, there are several other thrift stores that purport to be somewhat charitable, and I just think it could be a slippery slope to try and evaluate each and every one. Essentially, these are retail outlets. That's what my reservation is, as well as the potential difficulty in making a proper determination of which one deserves it and which one might not.
Councillor?
I'm prepared to make a motion, if you'd like.
Are you looking to the recommendation number 4? Is that what you're?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll move that 10-year permissive tax exemption be granted to the 3 Beacon Community Services thrift stores.
Do we have a seconder? No seconder?
I'll second for discussion.
Motion is
Second.
seconded by Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor Novak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand staff's concerns and reservations about this, that yes, they are retail stores. However, they are owned and operated by Beacon Community Services. They are staffed solely by volunteers. There is no profit of any kind generated in these stores. Any monies that they do generate go to support Beacon Community Services, which we've already discussed at length are vital for this community. I think the only paid employee for the 3 Beacon Community thrift stores is a thrift store manager who I think oversees all 3 of them. I could be wrong about that, but that's the last I recall hearing about that. And all other staff in those stores are volunteers. So it seems to me that any monies collected, for the most part, and of course, their stock, their merchandise is all donated, so they don't have any costs in terms of the merchandise they have. Their only costs are in getting those things out to public. Monies that they take in go straight to Beacon Community Services. We know what good work they do. I don't think this is a slippery slope. Yes, there are other thrift stores. Some of them do have charitable purposes, and I suspect that they might be considered at a future meeting if they were to come to council. But if I would think that the monies collected by the community thrift services are going to pay taxes to the town, to me that's kind of a perversion of the use of or of the purpose of these thrift stores. I think it makes perfect sense that they be as exempt from taxes as the BCS offices, as the Shoal Center, as any other charitable organization whose sole purpose is to generate money and services for those less fortunate. So I don't really understand why we would not consider these for PTEs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Keefe?
Thank you. I'm supportive at this time, although I'll be interested to what my colleagues have to say. I think, you know, and I understand staff's reservations in terms of other organizations that might come forward. The thing that's different for me with Beacon Community Services is that all of the programs that they offer are things that are priorities important for us. So in terms of supporting seniors, in terms of affordable housing, programs for children, youth, and families, workforce development, all that, the money that they collect from the thrift stores goes into funding those things, which I think are important priorities. Other charities, maybe, you know, I think there might be a thrift store for the SPCA, and that's a worthy cause. And maybe there's others, but currently the things that are identified as that Beacon Community Services provides are things that I'm comfortable with saying that those are priorities and important in our OCP and our economic development strategies and our housing strategies. So for those reasons, I'm supportive of this at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Other committee members? Councillor Duncan and then Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you. I'll be voting against it for roughly the same reason. I think one of the things I look at when I'm evaluating what the services are that are being provided and whether a permissive tax exemption is the best way to help this organization as a government, as a local government, knowing what our needs are and what the issues are that we have levers to control that caused the problems they are addressing. And since we know the biggest problems that they're addressing are unaffordable housing and issues with families in our area, and that the primary problem our families have is not that there's nowhere for them to work, but that they all have jobs, as Councillor Garnett has pointed out, but nowhere to live. And so every time we grant a permissive tax exemption to an organization, we make up the taxes somewhere else. And that somewhere else is residential housing, which is too expensive, and that's why our families are in trouble. So by making the housing more unaffordable, we're actually cutting the legs out from under people to support themselves rather than have to rely on charity. I would much prefer to do the things that allow people to be self-sustaining, which they could already do, rather than cutting their legs out and then forcing them to rely on charity. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I won't support the motion. I concur with, staff's concerns here with respect to the precedent this may set in the community for other thrift nonprofit stores. This is a retail environment which generates revenue, and I'm not sure. We've certainly heard this evening a number of positions and thoughts on Beacon Community Services that aren't necessarily substantiated in the limited documentation we have before us. So I'm a little concerned, if everything we're hearing has been in reality accurate in terms of their operational environment. And I think that, looking for the number of requests that we've seen this evening from Beacon Community Services, we've done a number of good things for them tonight under these new tax exemption requests, and that by taking them into their retail market, I'm not comfortable going to that extent this evening. So I'll leave my comments there and I won't support the motion. Thank you.
Any further comments? Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to staff. If the information is not available this evening, would request for the council meeting next week, this will be coming forward to council, whichever way our recommendation goes this evening is. Two questions. Do we have, can you ballpark what Beacon Community Services overall revenue is, annual revenue?
Based on the financial information provided, their revenue in the year, the most recent year end was 20.378 million, of which 2.17 million was from thrift store sales, not all of those being in Sydney.
Thank you. And my second question through the chair was what the amount of the tax exemptions are for the three properties you provided from the others.
They are in the table in the staff report.
There they are.
Total for all 6 organizations would be just over 100,000, with the thrift stores accounting for the majority of that amount. So about 66,000.
Thank you for the information. I'm a bit on the fence on this one. On the one hand, our criteria is that they're a nonprofit. The other is that they're providing and that they're operating a nonprofit. And one of the things that's different from the other retail businesses in Sydney, unless there is another nonprofit with volunteer staff, is that as Beacon Community Services enumerated in their 3 letters, they provided a letter of request for each of the 3 properties. There's a total of 20,000 hours of volunteer time to operate these businesses, operate these locations. In terms of providing retail goods, secondhand goods of various description to the community, that has, its importance in terms of recycling those goods and providing goods at a very low price to within our community, providing options. And when you think of retail, you think of profit and associated, but when you look at their operations, 2.7 million coming from not just the thrift stores in Sydney, but all of their thrift stores in the greater region is quite significant. So I'm, as a colleague indicated while motivating that, I think we've been very reasonable in providing the 3 previous permissive PTEs to their other 3 operations, and either way, whichever I vote this evening, I'll probably speak again to it next week when it comes to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. If I may ask a question through to staff. Indicating your report was a total tax exemption of about 640,000. I'm following up on Councillor Duncan's question that this then is transferred to residential tax load. Do you have an idea of how much that is? Or just to be clear on that, is that, I'm wondering if that's what happens with the funds that we don't receive through the permissive tax exemption.
Any property that's exempted comes off the tax roll, and it doesn't impact the amount of revenue that the various jurisdictions need to raise. So it's just the remaining taxable properties that bear the burden of that. So that 640 includes not just municipal taxes, but all jurisdictions, including provincial school taxes. And the table breaks down the no-brainers, if you will, from the ones that are more discretionary. So the more discretionary ones that have received council consideration tonight would total closer to $240,000 in total taxes. And it's not just residential properties that bear that extra burden, but all classes of property, including commercial.
Thank you. And just to be clear, I'm just following up on Councillor Duncan's question. That amount of money, because they're exempted, we still need to gather that money on all across the board. So the property owner has to pick up that. Those that are paying still have to pick up that amount. Correct.
Any taxes foregone through exemption are picked up by the entirety of the remaining tax base.
Thank you. Just to be clear. So yes, on that note, I'm agreeing with Councillor Duncan that it's just putting a bigger load on our taxpayers across the board, not just on municipal taxes. So I will not be supporting this tax exemption either. Any further comments? Councillor Novak.
Just a couple of additional comments. First of all, yes, this money will get distributed among the tax base, but it's important to remember that a big chunk of that tax base is commercial, so it doesn't all go to residential. And I'd be hard pressed to believe that this additional $60,000 spread out amongst the entire Sydney tax base is making our residences any more unaffordable than they already are. And I'm not suggesting that they're affordable now. I know it's a difficult time, but it's certainly not making the situation substantially worse. The other thing too is that if you know, these stores, they act as a huge draw to bring people into Sydney. Cars filled with people coming from as far away as Duncan come into Sydney to shop at our thrift stores. And while they're depositing money in those thrift stores, I dare say that they're also providing additional revenues for restaurants, coffee shops, other retail stores, etc. So they're really adding to the economic vibrancy of the town. And I would hate to think that one or more of these stores might close simply because we're not prepared to give them this tax exemption. I think it's worthwhile. I think you know, it's a not-for-profit organization, and as Mayor McNeil Smith suggested, that the volunteer hours that are provided to these stores are huge. I can't imagine why we wouldn't support these volunteers in their desire to do something good for the community. It is not a huge burden to the rest of the residential and commercial taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from committee members? Councillor O'Keefe.
Yeah, just one, you know, the comment that if we do this, that we're somehow forcing more people to rely on charity, you know, I have difficulty with, as a taxpayer in Sydney, and I believe most taxpayers here would be okay with absorbing whatever it is, a few dollars more, to allow Beacon Community Services to put tens of thousands of dollars more out to people who will get some help from Beacon Community Services in terms of helping them to get a job so they can be more self-sufficient, helping get other programs that will support families. So I'll continue to support the motion. Thank you.
Further comments? Councillor Garnett.
I might as well weigh in as the only one who hasn't spoken to it. I won't support the motion, and I think it is important and relevant as we speak of difficult economic times that we do have people in our community who are on fixed incomes who even $5 more in taxes does make a difference when you're potentially lining up at a food bank. And just for me, it's problematic for me that it is a retail operation. I think for me it would be a little different if we were just supplying goods and stuff out in the community for people who couldn't afford to buy it, then that would be a different argument for me. But as it sits in the way staff has presented it, I won't support the motion. Thank you.
Further comment, committee members? See none, we'll now move to a vote on the motion that the request for tax exemption of the 3 Beacon Community Services thrift stores be granted. All in favor? Opposed? Mayor McNeil Smith, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Garnett, Councillor Duck, Councillor Rintoul. Opposed, the motion fails. Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you. I'll move that the request for tax exemption of the 3 Beacon Community Services thrift stores be denied.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further comments? Councillor Rintoul.
Yeah, very briefly, because I think we've all spoke to this in one way or another. This is a new application. We're not taking away something from Beacon Community Services. In fact, we've recommended to council this evening that we offer them a number of exemptions through other elements of their operations. And so we've been doing the right thing here, and I concur with the staff assessment that this is a retail business that's generating revenue and some very valuable properties that I don't think should be eligible for the tax exemption. So I'll pause there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duncan.
No, nothing to add to what Councillor Rintoul said.
Further comments, committee members? See none, we'll move to a vote on the motion to request for tax exemption for the 3 Beacon Community Services thrift stores be denied. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor O'Keefe and Councillor Novak opposed. The motion passes. No further business on the agenda tonight. I will seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you, committee members. See you.